Hey guys, it's Tim, and welcome to a brand new episode of The Countdown. And since last week I talked about a DC TV show, I think it's only fair that this week I talk about a Marvel TV show. So this week I'm going to list off 3 problems that I have with Marvel's Jessica Jones. Now, if you follow the channel for long enough, you should know that I've made it no secret that of the 4 seasons of Marvel Netflix series that we've had so far, Jessica Jones Season 1 has been my least favorite. But I definitely know that there are people who love the season and it's their favorite of the Marvel Netflix shows, so I definitely know that I'm going to get disagreements on my points for this. But with that said, I will try to defend what I'm saying as best I can without spending too much time on it. With that said, let's get into my 3 problems with Jessica Jones Season 1. So the first problem that I have is, I find the series to have a lot of storyline and pacing issues. And cards on the table right off the bat, there might be some spoilers here for events that happen in the season, so just in case you haven't seen the season yet, I'm just gonna forewarn you now. But for really 2 big reasons, the story just doesn't flow as naturally as any of the other Marvel Netflix shows. The first of which being that, by the end of the first season, it feels like they couldn't really stretch the entirety of the plot through 13 episodes, so they kind of sidetracked and arbitrarily extended things in order to reach the amount of time that they needed. And this is probably most evident with the Nuke plot, where while the character who eventually becomes this universe's version of Nuke is established early on and is a recurring character, the entire Nuke part of his backstory just kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. And then, just as soon as it's introduced, it just leaves the story. It's kind of coincidental that Kilgrave just happened to take control of this random New York City cop who happened to be part of a failed super soldier program, and the plot just kinda comes and goes, and it doesn't really feel like anything was accomplished by the end besides making it to 13 episodes. But that actually kind of ties into the other issue that I have with the storylines, in that it doesn't really feel like a lot of them conclude, they just kind of end. For me anyway, an example of this is the ongoing story arc of the girl who Jessica's trying to help who Kilgrave had her kill her parents. And while maybe more of this will come to a head in Season 2 at some point, for Season 1, by the end of her storyline when she's killed off, it doesn't really feel like it has that deep of an impact beyond inconveniencing Jessica's ability to send Kilgrave to jail, which probably wouldn't have worked to begin with. Like, I didn't really feel like we knew that character well enough to be that invested in whether or not she lived, and the plotline that we were following with her didn't really feel like it was going anywhere. A minor example would be with Eka Darbil's character, who's a drug addict at the beginning of the season, and it's revealed that Kilgrave originally made him take drugs with his powers, but was controlling him through the ability to provide him drugs. But once Jessica finds out about this, he spends like a night going through withdrawal, and then he's just all better after that point. Like, what was the point of saying he was controlling him through drug addiction if the drug addiction was so easily resolved? Like, they could have just said that Kilgrave was just controlling him normally and that would have worked fine. And it just feels like it goes on like that throughout the entire season, where stuff is brought up and then just kind of feels like it just stops. And it's not like I need everything to be wrapped up in a neat little bow just in this season, or even for it to resolve in a way that's beneficial to our characters. But it just feels hard to stay invested in what's going on when it feels like what's going on can be dropped at any point in favor of something else. Or even going so far as to feel like things were only put into the script for either shock value or grittiness without any real meat to it. But that could all just be me. But beyond that, my next 2 points are going to feel more so like minor complaints. So, moving on to my next problem, Kilgrave's powers come across as incredibly inconsistent as the story goes on. From early on, it's established that his powers work by making other people want to do what he says. And this is backed up by the fact that when attempting to stop people from doing the thing he told them to do, they'll react violently against it. But then later on there are scenes where it feels more so like a physical compulsion that people have to follow him as opposed to a mental one. Like later on with the chef and the maid, Kilgrave is physically forcing them to not blink, but then they're asking him to allow them to blink, which seems weird since they should want to not blink if he told them not to. And even beyond that, I'm not fully clear as to how his powers work, because it's stated to be some sort of virus or bacteria that he emits that causes people to want to compulsively obey what he tells them. But if it's a virus that's infecting people, why does he have to be conscious in order for his commands to continue to be obeyed? Like, I'm not quite sure why the bacteria cares if he's conscious or not. And I'm sure there is a way to explain around all of this, but it honestly feels like they were just making up the rules as they went along in whatever was most convenient to the scene at the time. But like I said, that's more of a minor nitpick. So, let me move on to my third and final problem, which is that I don't really find Jessica to be likable at all. And I get that she's supposed to be standoffish and kind of an asshole, but she backs it up with absolutely no charm that makes me engaged in following her. And I want to state for the record that I don't have any problem with characters who aren't inherently good people. I mean, my favorite DC character is Lex Luthor, but the way she's presented just isn't particularly engaging enough to actually counterbalance how she acts. And based on the flashbacks from before she met Kilgrave, she's kind of always been like this. Like, the trauma causes her to drink more and to have sort of PTSD when she's near him, but it didn't actually seem to have a radical impact on her personality, so you can't really use it as an excuse for why she acts the way that she does. And even beyond that, she doesn't come across as particularly competent at her job. She actively declines work, she misses clues that are blatantly in front of her, and most of what she figures out in investigations is done through committing felonies. I don't know, maybe she worked for other people, but I just couldn't get invested in the character because I just didn't like following her. Which, even beyond the story problems that I mentioned earlier, made it hard for me to stay invested in what was going on, and it ended up giving me a worse viewing experience. But like I said at the beginning, the series does have its positive points and it does work for a lot of people. For example, the acting of the series is very solid, especially from people like David Tennant and Nneka Darville. It's just that these three things that I mentioned prevented me from enjoying the series as much as I had the other Netflix series. And hopefully these problems can be fixed by the time Season 2 comes out. But what do you guys think? Do you guys have your own problems with Jessica Jones? Or do you want to tell me off and say I'm completely wrong about what I've said? I understand. But, as always, let me know down in the comments what you think, and until next time, this has been Tim from the Hybrid Network, signing out.